Hello everyone. In this video, we're going to deploy our REST APIs on Google Cloud. And the goal of the video is to get familiar with cloud services. And specifically, we're going to work with Google Compute Engine to start our own virtual machine and run our database server there. And then we're going to use Google App Engine in order to run our REST API engine. And generally, if you wanted to build a REST API that connects to your database, after selecting the technology that what language you're writing your APIs in and the database you want to run the code in, the next step would be for you to think about the architecture and how you want to deploy or run these services. And using Google Cloud Platform, there could be different options that you may want to use. You may want to build everything from scratch on virtual machines, or you may want to use managed services, for example, Cloud SQL for your database, or App Engine platforms, which builds a platform for running your application inside that. So there are different architectures that you may decide to use for your application, and the one that I have chosen for this video is that I'm going to run my database on Google Compute Engine. That means that I'm going to start a virtual machine and install MySQL database on that. And after my database is ready for my REST engine, I will deploy that on an App Engine platform. This will allow us to get the experience of working with both services, as well as being able to deploy and use our system. So to follow these steps, I'm going to deploy the code that I've already written. So the code is available in my GitHub page. This code is written using Express.js, and for the database, it's using MySQL database. I will be using this code and I will demo how you can deploy it. The steps that I'm following, I've also made them available in my GitHub page, which you can go to the learning resources. And for this video, the second one under working with REST API is the one that I'm following. So building REST APIs on App Engine with database on Compute Engine. This is the one that I will be following for this video. So let's see. So the steps that I will be following, or I'm going to first start with creating a virtual machine on Google Compute Engine. After I'm done with that, I'm going to install my MySQL server on that virtual machine. After this is done, my next step will be I'm going to clone the code on my local machine, local system, and run it locally. Make sure that everything works correctly with the database that I have started. And when everything is good, I will move to deploy my code on App Engine. So let's get started. So now let's create a virtual machine on Google Cloud Compute Engine. To do this, I would go and create a new project. You may name it as demo project or whatever you want to name it, and make sure that your billing account is enabled. You just hit create and the project will be created. Because it may take a few minutes, I have already created the project and I'm going to use that. After your projects are created, you can open the menu bar and search for Compute Engine and select it. I've already pinned it, so I should be able to select it from the list here. I'm going to select virtual machine instances. And when it's ready, I'm going to create a new instance. You can name your instance anything you want to name it, just to make sure that the name cannot have capital letter and this name cannot be changed later on. I would go for the region and zone to stay with the default ones, and also for the machine configuration, you may use the default ones, or if you want to get powerful machines or less powerful, you may want to choose how many CPU and memory you want to assign to these machines. The next thing to choose, I'm going to select operating system that will be installed on this machine. And this one I'm specifically going to choose Ubuntu 18. And I would recommend you to do that as well. I'm choosing Ubuntu because I'm more comfortable working with that. And for you to be able to follow the steps the exact way as I'm doing, I would suggest you to do the same. And after that, I will allow HTTP and HTTPS traffic on my machine, and that's it. I'll create it to this virtual machine. So it may take a couple of seconds to a minute to get created. When the machine is created, it will be shown in green, saying that the machine is running. But one thing to know is that usually by default, all the network ports are closed, and the virtual machine cannot be accessed from other networks. So what I want to do is that for this virtual machine, if I want to use specific ports or connect to this from other places, I need to set the network configurations, enable those ports in the firewall. This server, this virtual machine that I set up here, I'm going to use it for my MySQL service. So just keep in mind, and just to know, MySQL service by default runs on port 3306. So that will be the port that I will enable on my virtual machine. So what I'll do is that I'll go to my firewall rules and create a new rule. And you may name it anything you want, and set the configuration for the authorized networks and also the ports that you want to allow in this configuration. And usually for security purposes, you want to make sure that you're not allowing extra ports or opening it for everyone to access your virtual machine. So you may want to only give specific accesses. But for the sake of this demo and just for testing purposes, I'm going to let everyone to connect to my virtual machine, and also make all the ports available. So I'm going to set, let's say, I'm going to name it all ports, or all networks, let's name it all reload. I'm going to use this name, and so you can set a specific network there. But what I'm going to set here is that for the IP addresses that are allowed to connect to this system, I'm going to, for now, set it as 000/0, meaning that everyone from anywhere can connect to my system. And then for the protocols here, I can make it to, so the minimum here for me in order to use it for my database services, that I need to enable port 3306 to get connected. So I can do that, or I can simply allow all, make all ports available. As I said, this is not recommended for security purposes, but just for testing, it would be easier for us to do that. And I'm going to add the same name I used as my target tag as well, and I'll just create this. When this tag is created and is associated with the network setting that we had, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add that to my virtual machine. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to Compute Engine once again, find my virtual machine and edit it. So I'll open the virtual machine, edit it, and then what I'm going to do is that in the network tags here, I'm going to add this allow all, and that's it. Let's save it. So my virtual machine settings are ready, and if I set up any service and I want to access this is the IP address that I can access my service. Let's say if I'm running a web application on this, probably I will use this IP followed by, let's say, the port 80, whatever that I am using for my web application, and I will put it in the browser and connect to it. If I'm running a MySQL server, which is what I'm going to do here, this will be the my database host IP, and I can using that IP I can access my database. Just one thing to note that now my virtual machine is running. If I want when I'm done working with this, I may want to stop this virtual machine to avoid getting extra charges. But one thing to note is that anytime you stop and start a virtual machine, this external IP address that you're receiving may change. And that may cause problems, especially if you're running an actual application then where your other code, your backend code, for example, is connecting to this database, and this IP address is set inside that backend code. So anytime you stop and start this virtual machine, that IP address of your database may change, and then your backend might not be able to connect and talk to your database. So just keep that in mind. If it changes, either you need to change the backend, or another way to do it, especially if you're running an actual real world example, real world application, you may want to make sure that this IP address is static, stays the same all the time. And if you want to do that, you can go to the network details, the same place that we enable those ports in firewall, and there's an option, there should be here, okay, external IP addresses. You can go there and request a new reserve a static address and assign that address that you get to a special virtual machine. I'm not going to do that for now, but just wanted to point out as an option if you want to use it. So I'm happy with the current IP that I have received, and I'm going to continue working with my virtual machine. Okay. So to connect to my virtual machine, so what I will do is that I'm going to use SSH, and that's going to give me a shell where I can type my commands and work with my operating system. With that, my setting of virtual machine that I wanted to set up is complete, and now we'll move to work and use this virtual machine.